Hello, Salam Alaikum. Welcome to this latest presentation, which is on the recommendations across all our schools that appeared both in the inspection reports and the distance learning evaluation. There will be variations on the recommendation from school to school, but there is a central theme that appeared in all the reports, not just across Athena schools, but across schools across Sharjah and in Dubai. What we hope to do with this presentation is just highlight some of the important areas that must be focused on quickly in order for the school to make rapid improvements. So in the next few slides, you will see us go through the performance standards from the inspection framework, and we've taken and consolidated the recommendations from the 13 or 14 areas, depending on which emirate you were in, from the distance learning evaluation. Quick action, thought through action without rushing leads to lasting improvements. And setting expectations from day one, minute one, what we expect to see will secure the improvements necessary, not to get a better judgment at the next inspection, but will secure the improvements necessary so that all groups of students make progress beyond the curriculum, national and international standards from day one, from the very first lesson. And after all, that's what we're in the business for. If lessons don't make a difference, then children don't make progress. And if children don't make progress and lessons don't make a difference, then we know where that ends up. And what we're looking for is for all students to be independent learners by the time that they reach the end of their schooling, and they make choices about their learning as they go along. So in the following slides, we will look at the central actions that are needed to secure those improvements. But one thing is really clear from school improvement. Schools improve rapidly when there is a clear vision, when everybody, every group of people unites around that vision, and expectations are very high. So when implementing the recommendations from any report, they should be put alongside the expectations that have already been laid out in schools, and we've laid out as Athena, we've laid out the minimum expectation that we want from all groups, from students in particular. So let's proceed. Progress will be made when every teacher, every member of staff, and every student knows what good progress looks like. So from day one, we should see in classrooms clear opportunities for students to make that progress. Now, I say in other videos what it is that teachers have got to do in order for that progress to happen. And we go through the structure of a lesson, and we go through setting clear learning objectives and how to give constructive feedback. That's not the purpose of this slide. Here is to set the expectation and to ensure that all members of staff know that one of the clear targets is to get to a minimum good level of progress for all groups of students from day one. How we measure that, how we look at that, will be covered in other presentations. In nearly all our reports, inspection reports, there is a reference to improving areas in individual subjects. One of the areas in Islamic education that comes up in almost every report is improving recitation and memorization of the Holy Quran. I think highlighted this particular subject because this also underpins the other area that we're really focusing in on. We want all students to learn really well and to learn the curriculum which they are following. But all that learning must be underpinned by Islamic values, the values of the UAE and the values of the school. I think Athena schools can set themselves apart by making it very evident that the recitation of the Holy Quran is something that which all students and teachers are proud, and that the Holy Quran contributes and is central to the development of the school and its values. When we look at Performance Standard 2 personal development, even in inspections, this sometimes doesn't get an in-depth look, and it tends to just focus on surface level behaviours from students. There's much more to Performance Standard 2 than I think many people realise. I think, well, what we want from day one, minute one, and we certainly want to see in school improvement plans, is a really targeted action which improves students' personal development. And what does that mean? It can mean different things, and it's up to schools to decide. But here are some areas where I think we want our Athena schools to be really distinctive in really focusing in on developing the students. These are one of the two outcomes. The first outcome is student achievement. The second outcome is personal development of students. It would be really good to see all students as leaders of their learning. It would be really good to see in development plans and evident around the school, students leading just like the adults lead. It's student leadership teams, student principals, students head of curriculum, students leading on health and safety, on digital safety. Students are very often the best leaders on online learning, and I'm not sure our schools have made enough use of those. So we want to see in our schools leaders of learning, whether online or in the school. And as the students progress through the school, we certainly want to see students taking independent responsibility within the community, whether as a volunteer, whether as a leader, whether as an inventor, whether liaising with other schools. Not just the set piece days or the set piece online days, but students taking responsibility for their role in the community now. Those two outputs, what we've got to look at, what we've got to change about what we do. If we want improvements in progress and personal development, we've got to change something about the way we deliver the provision. And the way we deliver the provision is through teaching and assessment. So if we want improvements, first thing we have to, in outcomes for students' achievement, we have to look in the classroom, look at what the teacher does and what impact it's having. And the number one thing that we want is really carefully planned, purposeful lessons that are pacey, where the student's learning moves from one moment to the next, is not a repetition from what was said at the beginning. And the students have the opportunity to deepen their understanding of concepts, break them open, that they are able to develop a skill which will enable them to apply their understanding of the concept. The two go together. And one of the most often areas cited for improvement in teaching is making connections. When learning is connected to the world around them or to other subjects or to something that interests the student imagination, then learning takes place beyond the curriculum standards. Connections will not be made by going through a textbook. That is clearly something we're not looking for, because it will not, and this is guaranteed, Working through a textbook routinely will not deliver progress that takes students beyond the curriculum national and international standards. The other area for teaching to really consider, and it comes in two parts really, is the data. And the data, and we often see this in almost every school, we see if they use data to instruction. And I think that sometimes the authorities have got a little bit bogged down on looking for the numbers and looking for test results and seeing how they're used, rather than looking at what information we have of where children are in their learning. If we really genuinely know starting points, then we can actually target the finishing points, which is beyond the curriculum standards. And the second part of this is the different groups, is knowing how students learn. That's not preferred learning styles. It's knowing how, if student is encountering a difficulty, how they get to the point that every other student is getting to. And it is every teacher is a teacher of a student of determination. Every teacher is a teacher of a child with gifts and talent. It's not something we can separate out. It's not something we can take away from our own classroom teaching. So if we're using the data correctly, we will be able to. We will be able to meet the needs of those students who have additional needs and who have gifts and talent. And one of the challenges laid down throughout my career was to look at students in a different way. To look at all students who have additional needs, sure. But those same students that have additional needs, which we perceive to be a detriment to their learning, will also have a gift and talent which enables them to overcome it. And I think you all know my own personal story. It's not because I think I've done anything better than anybody else, I certainly don't. But I, as a deaf person from early childhood, do not accept the notion that teachers in the class cannot cope with people like me or with any other additional need, or that we're not able to comprehend. What we need help with is making sure that we have access to the material in the way that we can understand it and visualize it. So, two main areas: improving the quality of teaching, but differentiating to meet the needs of different groups of students by using data effectively. And when we use data effectively, we will be assessing well. The whole purpose of assessment is not some arbitrary measure, is to enable us to know what we need to do to be better, or to make particular choices in the curriculum as we go through the school. The curriculum is one that very often gets left behind, but the curriculum is all that we teach, everything that is offered to students. And I still don't think yet that, and I'm not talking about Athena schools, but across the educational establishment, that we've fully understood how to present a curriculum in a way that all students can make progress. It is imperative from day one that the curriculum mapping is clear, that the curriculum mapping identifies the concepts, the skills, and the context in which those concepts and skills are applied. That is mapped through the curriculum. In the US curriculum, we talk about vertical and horizontal alignment. That just simply means what children need to know prior to what they're coming to learn at the point they're learning it. That's number one, and that it's connected with the other learning. So what they learn in maths, if they learn literacy or language in a certain way in the English or Arabic lessons, then that connects with how they learn the language in mathematics. And there is really important for all of us, language development, as well as the other areas I've identified, is the responsibility of every teacher, not just the English or Arabic teacher or whatever language they're studying, and particularly in the early years, but in all years. And how do we develop language? We certainly don't develop language by being passive. We develop language when we have opportunities to write, opportunities to speak, opportunities to listen deeply and carefully, and opportunities to speak from different perspectives. So we want to see in every school improvement plan, we want to see the curriculum mapped in such a way that allows for the development of language, and that it identifies for all the teachers the concepts that need to be broken down and the skills to be developed and the context in which those skills and knowledge should be applied. Curriculum mapping is then precisely only that. It is a document. It is something, it remains an academic exercise. If it doesn't translate, we can't see a connection with the teacher planning, and we can't see a connection with what happens in the classroom with the teacher planning. And as I said on the previous slide about data, when we're adapting the curriculum, that's precisely what we mean. We take the data from end-of-year assessments, which say that a majority of students haven't developed various concepts, and we make sure that that time is allowed within the curriculum to develop those concepts to the level they're required to do. So, curriculum mapping, ensuring that it truly identifies and represents language development opportunities from KG to grade 12 or from foundation stage 1 to year 13, and that there are opportunities for the concept to be broken down, skills to be developed, and opportunities to apply that knowledge and understanding in a range of different contexts, not just for one group of students, but for all group of students. When the concepts are broken down in such a way, then you will see that the students of determination's needs are met, and you will also be able to provide challenge. With the curriculum comes the responsibility of the curriculum coordinator to ensure that all teachers are aware of their responsibilities and they all know how to adapt the curriculum within their class. They all know how to use the data, the formal data and the informal data, to adapt that curriculum, to adapt what is being taught to meet the needs of the groups of students, not so they work at a lower level, so that they've got the opportunity that the gap that they are experiencing is bridged, and if they're working at a higher level, that they are challenged to apply that learning in a range of other. When we come to performance standard 5, we look at protection, care and guidance, and within the online context this has been absolutely vital, and we're all finding our way to a certain extent as to the protocols and what we should be doing to support all groups of students, but particularly those that may be most vulnerable. And first problem that we have is identification of needs, and that it's not just identifying, labeling somebody. There's a real difference between the label, I'm sorry to use myself as an example again, is labeling me as deaf does not help identify what I have to do in the classroom. You have to identify the learning needs. So somebody who's got a label of autism, what is it and where is it and how is it they learn best? And all of us have a responsibility to make sure that the identification of students' needs, and that includes those who have particular abilities. So that means we need to know how to use the data that we spoke about in previous performance standards. We really need to know what to do when we've got data that tells us a child is lagging behind, but we know in the classroom when we ask them to respond verbally that they're really strong. What do? How do we challenge them? How do we make sure we don't go and deal with their low-level needs instead of challenging them to achieve and meet their high-level needs? Every new teacher, it must be built into the plan, must go through some kind of safeguarding training, must be aware of their roles and responsibilities, of knowing what to do when a child expresses about themselves or somebody else, or when they don't express that they're not safe. It is our responsibility to keep students safe. So in all our schools, safeguarding should be of the highest level. And within the safeguarding comes the responsibility of health and safety. And I'm afraid that's another area where we're all responsible. Coordinating and point out the processes and procedures that we need to follow in particular circumstances to keep ourselves safe. We're going to all have to be very watchful in these times, digital health and safety. Nevertheless, the same principle applies. We must have clear processes. These processes for keeping children and staff safe, and these processes must be made known and be known to all members of the school community, including the governors, the parents, the staff, the children, and the wider community. And leadership. I often used to get into quite a few discussions when I was an inspector about leadership, because it becomes a big shock under the UAE framework for many people who work incredibly hard to see their leadership judged only acceptable when they know that all the things that have been put in place and all the work that they've done and all the teachers are working very hard. Unfortunately, what we do must reflect and have impact on student achievement and personal development. Not unfortunately, fortunately it must. It's the impact that's the most important. So how do we keep focused on the impact? Well, the first thing is everybody must know the vision. And the second thing is everybody must know their role and responsibilities. And within that, particular important group of people for knowing their roles and responsibilities is the middle leaders. They are the engine room of school improvement. So really defining the roles of the senior leaders and the middle leaders and their responsibilities for holding everybody accountable for improving student achievement is really important. So we'll be looking at the roles and responsibilities of all groups, and we'll be looking at what middle leaders see their roles to be. In many school systems, the role as middle leaders has been supervisory, and we've even used the word supervisor. It's not helpful, because what are they supervising? The role of the middle leader is to improve learning and personal development. It's as simple as that. So every middle leader should know the curriculum. Every middle leader within their area, every middle leader should know the data and know how to interpret and analyze that and keep a track on that. And every middle leader should know and should have shared with their team what good learning looks like and how we measure the progress that students have made within their area. We must try and replicate what we've done with face-to-face learning with online learning. And that we must be really detailed in our thinking. So our improvement plan should really reflect our contingency plan. There should be a connection. They should not be disconnected. And we should have a really clear idea at the beginning of the academic year as to exactly where we are as we start the year in terms of the strengths and weaknesses. What is it we need to improve with in terms of the technology solutions that we're applying? What is it we need to improve in terms of our communication? What is it we need to improve in terms of our keeping students safe and enabling them to make progress? By working together and with a clear vision, I am really confident that all Athena schools will shine out in this academic year, 2020-2021. And none of us are doing it alone. By working as a community and as a team, we will improve by being really focused on ensuring from day one, minute one, that every group of students makes progress beyond the curriculum, national and international standards. Athena schools will shine. Here we have some useful documents and references that we've got on our Padlet, and Athena will continue to support, challenge, and be with you every step of the way. The most important words I can ever use, and mean them very sincerely, is thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your patience during these challenging times. And thank you, most importantly, for being focused on improving the learning outcomes for each and every student within our care. Please use this presentation as you wish, as your own slides, use it in sections, but I leave you with the two most important words I know in Arabic. Shukran jazilan.